everyone, it's Haley, and today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This book is a YA historical fiction that follows 4 teenagers who are all fleeing and have been for years from the atrocities that have affected the various countries that they are from of World War II. So they are near the end of World War II and they are fleeing from the Bolsheviks and Stalin, and they are also fleeing from Hitler and his regime. They basically can't find safety anywhere on land, so they are trying to get to a ship that will take them to safety, but they end up being part of one of the greatest maritime tragedies in history and one of the most forgotten ones. Ruta Sepetys' writing is absolutely phenomenal. I love her writing. She has quickly made her way into my favorite authors list, especially for historical fiction. I read Between Shades of Grey, which is her other book. She does have another book, but I haven't read that one yet, Out of the Easy. I haven't read that one yet, but Between Shades of Grey blew my mind because it was unflinchingly honest and takes place in a concentration camp at the time of a Lithuanian genocide. And she just tells it like it is. And this book was the exact same. She's telling it like it is. She's not shying away from the atrocities of war. She has them at the forefront. She's not sugarcoating anything, which tends to happen in YA historical fiction, but she really is not blinding you from that. She is making sure that you see what these people lived through, and I mean, the tragedy that they're a part of, it actually happened. So you see that these could be like similar stories to other people who were trying to flee from their homeland at a time when everything is like terrible. I don't even know how to describe it. This book made me so emotional, and her writing just brought it to the next level. She is such an amazing writer. She has such a poetic way of stating things, but at the same time, she's very factual about it. There were many lines in this book that I had to underline because they just stuck out to me and they were so powerful and so well said. Like, I would love to go and hear her speak because I can only imagine that she would be an amazingly eloquent speaker because this book is so beautiful. There's so many amazing quotes in here, and it was just the way she told the story kept me wanting to read it, and it kept me very engaged, and I felt like I was reading like a poem because it was so beautifully written and it just flowed so nicely. One of the other things about her writing is that it really brings out the characters. She writes very character-driven stories. Now you get multiple perspectives in this novel. You get the 4 perspectives of the 4 characters, the 4 main characters whose paths end up intersecting, and the chapters are very short, but that really worked because their perspectives would kind of intertwine with each other and you got the bigger picture of the whole story. And it kind of felt like you were reading from each of their diaries and you were filling in the missing pieces, like that one would be missing, you would fill it in with the other's words. And I think getting those multiple perspectives gave the whole story a really realistic feeling. That being said, I love the characters in this book. Joanna, she's a nurse and she is doing her best to help people, and I think this was largely her story. I think it was largely a story of her and Florian. I think they were the 2 main characters, and I really enjoyed Joanna, seeing her wanting to help so many people, wanting to save lives, but she can't save everyone, and that's a really hard realization for her to come to, and I think she acted as kind of the mother or the leader of their group, and the way that she took up that role even in a time when like there are so many terrible things happening and she has to put on a brave face for it. I think she was a very inspirational character. Florian was a character who had a lot of mystery surrounding him, and you didn't really get many answers until closer to the end, but the mystery surrounding him made him a very intriguing character to read from his perspective because he is a German and he is a young German able-bodied boy and he should be fighting for the Reich, but he's not, and you're wondering the whole entire time, how has he gotten himself out of it? And as you slowly start to put the pieces together, you get to see more of his character than you could ever see from just him telling you, if that makes any sense. Like, it's better to kind of learn as the story goes on because it's very methodically put together where you learn the pieces, and becomes this really cool puzzle that gives you a bigger picture of what's happening. Amelia was a character who my heart went out to her, and she honestly broke my heart. She is a Polish girl who had to flee from her country because of the Soviet invasion, and she is just in such a terrible situation because she speaks Polish, she doesn't speak German, and she doesn't understand people very well, so her communication isn't very good, and I can't even imagine how terrifying that would be to not speak the language and have all these terrifying things happening around you and not really being able to talk to anyone or really make sense of what's going on. So I really felt for her, and you could tell that the things that she had seen had really taken their toll on her, and her story just really touched me and it made me very, very emotional, but I really enjoyed reading from her perspective. Alfred was an interesting character because he is kind of on the other side of things, but he's also not. So he's kind of a bad character, but at the same time you can see that he does have a little bit of goodness in him, and it really shows you how at the time people who are ultimately good could become bad people and how terrible it is, but it's kind of just, it was kind of inevitable. They just became a part of this regime that is terrible and that they just wanted to fit in, so they just went for that regime, if that makes any sense. And I think you could ultimately see that with his character, that he was believing in the word of Hitler and he was following Hitler and working for the Reich because he was desperate and he wanted to feel like he was included and like he mattered. And I think you see most of his perspective is told in letters, and I loved that. I thought that worked so well. And they're not even letters that he's sending, they're just imagined letters. And I think that seeing that, it was kind of like you're seeing into his mind, because it's almost like a letter that it was like a letter that he doesn't want anyone to ever read, and reading them just gave you a look inside of him as he tries to be this like really powerful soldier, but you got to see through that shell. You also have a lot of side characters in this story, and I think that they added to the story so much and took it to the next level, because you got to see like the shoe poet, who he talks about shoes all the time, and he talks about poets and poetry, and I loved him as a character because he was very symbolic, and I think that he was one of the characters that I wish we had gotten more of his perspective, because he was very intriguing and I want to know more behind his story. And then you also have the wandering boy. So the characters are kind of given these names that aren't really names, and I think that it really leaves it open to reality, because these are things, like I said, that could actually, like, they're similar to things that actually happened to people at that time. So giving these characters really obscure names that aren't really general names really left you able to imagine that this actually happened to people, and for that reason the story was so, so powerful. Now I kind of got into plot with the characters because, like I said, this story is very character driven, but at the same time, I really enjoyed the fact that it was unearthing a tragedy that you don't even hear about anymore, which is crazy. Like, the tragedy that happened is one of the most terrible things that I've read about, and no one really talks about it, which is so odd to me. So I did a lot of research into this because I was very intrigued by it, and I think that that was kind of the point of this book. It intrigues you and it makes you want to learn more about what happened and all the lives that were lost at this time, and I think that it does a really great job of wanting you to know more. And I just really enjoyed this. I honestly can't say too much about the plot because, like I said, it's very character driven, but it's very similar to Between Shades of Grey in the fact that it was unflinchingly honest and you saw these terrible, terrible things, and it really opened your eyes to the situation at that time and how teenagers, people who are your age, were going through this and how they had to try and make sense of a world that really didn't make sense. So overall, I ended up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. It is one of my favorite historical fictions. I just thought it was fantastically written. The characters were amazing and I just loved it. I'm sorry if this review wasn't very good. I honestly have such passionate feelings toward this book that I don't even really know how to critique it or how to talk about it, because I just loved it and I fell in love with the characters, and I know that they are going to stay close to my heart for a very long time. So this book was very much in the vein of The Book Thief in that way. So that is all for today's review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have read this book, your thoughts on it, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.